Good morning. Welcome to the podcast for Concordia's OT program. I'm super excited this morning to be able to talk to one of our occupational therapy doctoral students, Kylie. Kylie, can you go ahead and just introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then kind of why you decided to come back to school.
Okay, great. I'm Kylie. I primarily work in pediatrics now. Started in skilled nursing, but pediatrics is definitely where I envisioned myself going. And I don't think I'm going to change my mind. I think pediatrics is definitely the route I'm going to stick with. Um, I wanted to go back to school because I just wanted to be able to, more independently and better serve my clients. Um, and I always have looked up to every single OT supervisor I've ever had. And I've always just wanted that knowledge. I just wanted to go back so I can learn the most that I can and, hopefully be able to serve my clients better than what I currently can.
Awesome. Well, we are so happy to have you in the Bridge program. Um, so you recently took community advocacy and leadership. I guess you're just finishing that class up right now. And part of that class, you identify an occupational injustice from current events or from your current practice. Tell us a little bit about what you've been focusing on and how you got interested in that topic.
So, my topic that I chose was the occupational injustice of lack of funding and resources, specifically in schools for children with disabilities. So, kind of what the trend has been is, you know, no sensory supports in schools or lack of training for teachers and support staff on sensory strategies to try to help kids to be able to stay in the classroom.
Mm,
Um, and then a lot of kids are being just completely removed from the classroom. So they're not getting any of the social participation, not learning any of those communication skills, things like that with their peers. They're kind of being isolated. And that's having a big impact on, how kids are developing. Um, and so I kind of got interested in this topic because I've had a lot of parents of my clients currently who have told me, how they feel like their kids are being treated in their school. And it's not necessarily like, oh, the teachers are mean or things like that. It's we
yeah.
don't have enough staff. We don't have funding for these kinds of resources. We don't have education on these
Mhm.
strategies. Like we don't know how to help kids. And I feel like that is something that OT can definitely step in and help with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Education right now is kind of messy. And then special education with different funding and different resources is definitely an area where OT can make a big impact. So you kind of touched on this, but can you expand a little bit on how do you see this as really, you use the term occupational injustice. And so this is something that we talk about in the program, but can you kind of expand what does occupational injustice mean to you? And then how does this problem fit into that definition?
So, specifically, I see this problem as falling under kind of the umbrella term of occupational injustice and underneath occupational deprivation, which
Mm,
is when there are things that are outside of the control of the individual that, like environmental things, things such as like lack of resources, lack of funding, lack of staffing that directly impact their ability to participate in what they're trying to do. So in this
mhm,
case, we're talking about schools. So, all of these things are not, it's not in the student's control. These are things that are honestly just kind of being taken from them because there's not there's not support for this to actually happen, you know. Um I don't know, I've become pretty passionate about this topic, I will say, throughout my research and just kind of, being more familiar with it and talking more with my my clients' families about it and their feelings, and even talking about it with some of my kiddos. Like they're upset that they're not being able to do things with their peers. They feel like they're being, isolated, almost like segregated, basically. Like
Yeah.
just kind of being told, well, you're different, so you can't hang out with the rest of us. And
Yeah.
it's so sad. And it really has started to, I don't know, it makes me pretty heated at times. I'm
Yeah.
like, how is this even happening? But
It's it
yeah.
really can change the way a child views themselves, right? Like if they are being kind of consistently set apart in a way that's not positive. Um, so what in your research are you seeing? So certainly it sounds like school and social participation. Are there other occupations that are being impacted? And then are there specific populations that you're seeing this impact more than others within the special education kind of subset of students?
So I've looked into um mainly my area of interest, which is like elementary age kiddos.
Okay.
Um, but I have seen a lot talking about how it only gets worse as they age up and go into high school. Because
Hmm.
then, they're not having paras go with students to classes so they can be with their typically developing peers. They're only in their own room. That's it.
Hmm.
And I feel like, at least from what I've seen and also my experience working as a para previously, um, there's some attempt to, when there are staff members available, there is some attempts to, take kiddos to their classrooms, at least for a time, so that they can be around their peers. It's just they spend the majority of their day in like the resource room or whatever other classroom that they're in.
Hmm.
Um, I will say the most that I've seen throughout my research is specifically related to autism. Um, that's kind of the biggest population of kiddos that really gets isolated, and I feel like those kiddos, especially with that diagnosis, socializing is so important.
Yeah.
Learning those social cues, learning how to communicate, um, even learning simple things such as, turn taking and sharing and cooperative play. Um, it's so important, and I feel like they're missing out on that, and it
Yeah.
just breaks my heart.
Yeah. The peer modeling is really important in all childhood development. Learning from your peers is a huge part, regardless of a disability label, for sure. So thinking about all of that, there's a lot that we could even further unpack in there, right? Because um, nobody's intending, I don't think, generally, that's not the intention of school professionals would be to isolate a group of kids. But there are a lot of factors, like you said, kind of out of a lot of people's control that are contributing to that. So how do you see OT, and OT's role in kind of helping address the problem?
So I think the biggest part, well, I mean, it's all kind of under the advocacy umbrella here. Um, but really just stepping in, trying to make the problem known to the general public. So I
Mhm.
feel like only, at least from what I've seen, it's only the families that are directly impacted that know that this is a problem, or you know, are wanting to see a change. So I feel like even just something as simple as just like spreading awareness. Um, Also, OT can definitely help in, reaching out, trying to get funding, you know, helping schools try to get grants for, sensory supports, things that they can use in the classroom. Um, OT is a great resource for educating and training staff on sensory strategies and how to use
Mhm.
those supports if they get them. Because that would kind of be like the next layer of that is,
Yeah.
okay, now we have these things, but what do we do with them?
Yes.
How do we know when to implement or how to implement things like that? But I feel like a lot of things would just be a little bit easier if they had, even just like a few sensory supports within the general education classroom.
Hmm.
That way, you know, kiddos know that, okay, I'm getting overstimulated. I can go over here to the calm space. I can choose a fidget or, even I can have a wobble cushion at my desk, things like
Hmm.
that. Just, I
Yeah.
feel like simple little things that typically, um, might translate into behaviors or be viewed as distractions. And they are distractions to other kiddos.
Hmm.
But I feel like there's relatively simple ways to kind of remediate that and not have to separate everyone from each other. Just
Yeah.
more inclusive practices.
I think for sure. Um, and who doesn't love a calm corner, right? I mean, that could be something all kids could learn how to use and help with better regulation within a classroom. I think there are definitely aspects of promoting regulation that could be for all students. They don't have to be only from a special education perspective. So I love that. Um, so let's talk about your social media campaign a little bit. How did you approach this from a spread awareness, try to get people invested in this? What did that kind of look like? What were maybe your favorite, maybe one of your favorite posts from the 5 day campaign?
Okay. Kind of a loaded question there. So I chose to use Instagram, which prior to this, I mean, I had to make an account. I have never posted on social media a day in my life.
Okay,
I've just, I don't know. I think I've always been too nervous to do it.
sure.
So I've never posted anything ever. So that was also its own learning curve.
Mhm.
Um, but it's it was really interesting. So I chose Instagram because I wanted to create posters that, had engaging, colorful visuals with like more like limited text just to kind of draw
Mhm.
people in initially.
Mhm.
Oh, that looks interesting. Let's read more about it. And then
Mhm.
in my description, I wrote a little bit more information and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of my favorite posts was I had one that talked about um, I believe I titled it "OT isn't just handwriting" or something like that.
Love that.
That's
Yes.
kind of the first thing that people think of when they think
Mhm.
of OT in the school setting is, "Oh, you help them with handwriting," which
Uh-huh.
that is the
Which
case. That does
we
happen a
do,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, that does happen, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So, it talked about, like, I kinda just listed like emotional regulation, you know, communication with peers, like things like that.
Yeah.
Other life skills, not just the handwriting piece of it. Although that is still very important.
It is, but it is not the only thing we do. And I do when I still remember like my first week at my very first school-based job, I walked into a classroom and the teacher said, "Oh, the handwriting teacher is here." And I thought, "Oh man, I've got a big hurdle here to like address that is I don't teach handwriting, first of all, but also like there's so much more to OT than that." Yeah.
Oh
So,
my gosh, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of first step when stepping into a school is establishing what we really do
Yeah.
as OT practitioners.
Yep. So what was your response like to that post? I guess being a new Instagram user, you maybe didn't already have an established following or, like that kind of aspect. Were you able to get a decent amount of kind of interaction on the posts or what did that look like for you?
It was pretty limited, but everything was positive.
Hmm.
Um, So that was good. And I did actually get a couple of DMs,
Okay.
which obviously very welcome to that.
Yeah.
Just kind of wanting to learn a little bit more information. And then somebody who DM'd me, they were talking about how they were a mom and they saw that this was, a huge issue in their child's life and just kind
Hmm.
of wanted to know a little bit more like, okay, how do I, how do we jump on this? How do we,
Yeah.
try to spread this awareness? How do we get in touch with, state legislators? Like how do we do these things? So that was a really good response. It's like somebody
So,
who's proactively like, oh my gosh, this hits close to home.
yeah.
How do I help? How do I
Yeah.
get my friends onto this? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I love that. Something I'm thinking about as another way that OTs could, what do you think about how we practice OT? So, thinking about different service delivery models, and I mean, I know when I was in full-time practice, there was sometimes pressure for me to take kids into the OT room and do therapy. I think sometimes it was seen as like therapy time was kind of seen as a break for the classroom. Like like can we have a little break? But I wonder about the more we push into classrooms and show what inclusive support can look like, does that make it easier for maybe general education teachers to kind of keep kids in that inclusive environment? Um, did you find anything in your research about practice delivery models or how even the way that OTs might approach a caseload, how that could impact inclusive practices?
Not specifically, but that is something that I have talked about with other classmates in my cohort.
Mhm.
Um, we've got a few of them that do work in schools, and they're kind of in the same boat of like, okay, sometimes it is appropriate to bring a kiddo out of the classroom and just work one on one in the OT space, but it's not always the best
Mhm.
practice. Obviously, it's very dependent on each individual kiddo and their needs and how they're going to learn best.
Yeah.
But we've also talked about how it is very important to, you know, do interventions and, treatment sessions in the classroom, in the environment where they're going to be
Mhm.
you know um and like you said, that also shows teachers, it shows paras like this is how you actually can implement this and how this can be successful in the
Mhm.
classroom so that kiddos don't have to be sent away or you
Mhm.
know excluded from activities with their peers.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, I agree, I think that's very important.
It's so interesting because we know environment makes a huge difference on behaviors, on
Mhm.
performance, I mean, the interaction between person, environment, and occupation is what we're all about. And so when we take kids out of the classroom, we're totally shifting that environmental piece. And I've had, you know, people say, like, wow, look what they can do when they're with you in your OT session. And I'm like, yeah, but if we're not in the classroom, like they can't really do it in the way that we need them to do it then. That's not true occupational performance if they're not able to do it in natural environment. Then they would always need whatever that environment from the OT room is to be able to do that. And maybe for some kids that is, right? I think that's a whole nother conversation around least restrictive environment and what does that mean and how is that interpreted. I think there are some students where that quiet, one-on-one, more isolated environment truly is least restrictive for them, but the number of students that that applies to is very small, I think. And so yeah, I think those conversations um, have to also happen at a systemic kind of level within the special education departments. With the special ed directors, you have to build a culture around that at a much higher level to know to really get that to come throughout a school system. But it could start with the OT. You never know. It
Oh
has to
yeah,
start somewhere,
absolutely.
right?
It
It has to
does.
start
Yeah.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, Okay, so what is there? Because I want to shift the conversation a little bit to your process as a student, but before we do that, is there anything for people who are listening, anything about kind of the access to OT or to resources in schools that you want to say or want people to know before we kind of shift gears in the conversation?
Um, I will say that I think that Facebook is a great resource for finding, especially local
Hmm.
groups and communities of people who are also very passionate about this topic. And then of course there's also, you know, national groups, people from
Sure.
all over the country that
Yep.
um, are kind of in the same boat, and they've got a lot of resources out there for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, they'll link you directly to, government officials to be
Yep.
like, send those emails. The
Yes.
more people that are hopping on, showing that this is important and we care,
Yep.
and you know, we we deserve to have the funding and resources for these kiddos that everyone else gets, like
Hmm.
and that's the thing too, is that, I mean, that's kind of a whole other can of worms, but um, you know, socioeconomic status, that is such a huge barrier too. Um, a lot of schools that are in, lower income areas have way less funding, way less resources, and that it's just simply not fair. It's like,
Yeah.
why does this area not deserve the same as, someone on the other side of town? It's like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and it just perpetuates systemic cycles then, because then that area is
mhm,
never going to be able to, on its own, pull itself out of that, maybe that income area kind of bracket where it's at. And if we
yeah,
were not providing alternative supports to help those kids, then it will never change. That area will never change in that. So, yeah, I think yeah, that could be a whole nother conversation, but there
yeah,
are so many challenges, the government resources allocated to schools and education is is certainly a challenge. It's a barrier to overcome. And schools are not like other businesses where we can, have just let's do this other service that we can provide and now we'll make more money. That's not how the system works. And so I do love your earlier point about, OTs can be resources for looking for grant funding and those kinds of things. So certainly there can be other funding avenues, but also there is a limit to how much you can make with a bake sale or selling gift cards or wrapping paper or
oh
whatever
yeah,
the
absolutely.
fundraising things from a school generally are. So yeah, I think you've got some really great ideas here. It is so important. I also really liked your point about like Facebook is a great place to make those connections. That was part of our kind of rationale to doing a social media campaign was really thinking about when we talk about advocacy in occupational therapy. Yes, we're advocating one-on-one with clients for insurance reimbursement or getting coverage for sessions, those kinds of things. But also, there are a lot of higher level topics and issues, these injustices that we need to be a part of having a voice, and how do we change those things? And what is an avenue to do that? Let's use social media for good instead of evil. I think social media has a ton of negative press out there, and fair, right? It can be
Yeah,
it can be accurate, but also we've never been able to share information this at this level the way we can currently in society. And while certainly, again, that could be seen for negative in some ways, like we can harness it for positive too. So, um, okay, so let's shift a little bit and talk about the advocacy process as a student. So you're an occupational therapy assistant. So you are also a clinician, a practitioner, but you've come back to school, so you're also a student. So how was and you talked about this a little bit, you started a new Instagram account for this, but the kind of process, the learning curve, did you do anything like this prior to being asked to do this for a class? Like what has been your experience with community advocacy up until this point, and then what was kind of taking this on like for you?
Oh man, yeah, I've definitely never done anything like this before. Um, but I mean, I did choose the advocacy badge
Hmm.
for my OTD route. So I always had, a vision for I could do this and I'm really
Hmm.
interested in this, but I've never tried it, didn't know where to start. So I think that this class has been like incredibly eye-opening.
Hmm.
It's I mean, even in the previous course to this one, behavioral health class, we talked a lot about advocacy in that class too. And so when I found out we were taking this one, I was so excited because I just wanted to learn more and like try to figure out how can I actually make a difference?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like this is something that I for sure want to, continue on with after graduation. I I've really kind of grown a passion for advocacy work
I
throughout my
love that.
process as a student. Yeah, I mean, it's so needed
Hmm.
and um and it is hard. Like I
Yep.
definitely understand why it's not for everyone. It's hard work and it takes a lot of time, but I feel like the impact is so worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Um, Even if you feel like you're not making a huge impact right now, every little step, every little thing, every single person who, sees this post or, they don't even have to interact. It's
Yeah.
just every little bit of knowledge that's put out there for people is going to make a difference in the long run.
Yeah. I love that. What was your most challenging part of the project?
Oh man. Um, I I don't know. I think honestly just trying to decide
Hmm.
um kind of how I wanted to go about the project to start. I've always loved making those posters and stuff. Canva is my best friend. So I knew I wanted to do something visually um, appealing and something more creative.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I landed on Instagram, the photo platform.
Yeah.
But I, I don't know. I think that was kind of like the hardest part was just, trying to figure out, um, how to get people to engage, um, I don't know, just really kind of how social media works because I'm so
Yeah.
out of touch. It's crazy,
Mhm.
especially for someone my age. I feel like, everybody and their grandkids are on social media these days,
Yes.
Um, and I've been pretty far removed from it. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the biggest learning curve, honestly, was just the basics of,
Yeah.
how to post things and make people want to engage and interact with it. So
Yeah.
that was the most challenging part.
Yeah. I definitely think effective social media use is an art and a science to it, and there are definite things to do and not to do, and even choosing the right platform and then how you present material on the platform that you've chosen. So yeah, I mean, I think it can be really fun as well. But definitely, I certainly, I know I've had posts where I'm like, well, I thought that would do better than that did. What did I do wrong? And then, try to fix it and tweak it. And yeah, for sure. So what was the best part of the project for you?
Oh man. Um, I think honestly just kind of learning like how much of a passion I've grown for it. Like
Mhm.
even just looking at other people's posts and just, trying to figure out, okay, how are they doing this? And even just, searching through Facebook groups. Because I didn't really know much about that, but I was talking to a friend of mine, another coda. She
Mhm.
was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so many groups on Facebook for, these specific things. You should look around." And so I
Mhm.
did, and I think just finding the community of people who are all in the same boat, all passionate about the
Mhm.
same thing. Um, I think that was really the most fun part was just discovering the community of people
Yeah,
that are out there. It
love
was
that.
just a really cool experience.
Yeah. I will put out a plug there for LinkedIn if you're looking for professional connections, especially around like advocacy topics. LinkedIn can be a great place to do that in a more professional setting. Where I have found like Facebook and Instagram is great, especially for I mean, for connecting with other therapists as well, but also for families and getting some of that like less of maybe like what organizations do I partner with for this or that. That would be more like LinkedIn um and then having that kind of real passion work I think is on the Facebook
Mhm.
side. So yeah, again, like knowing what each platform kind of does and where who the demographic for that is can make a big difference in the intentionality of your campaigns when you're doing awareness projects and things. Um, Okay, so you're a doctoral student, and you've been developing your capstone project along the way as well. Does this project connect at all to your capstone project, or is it totally separate?
Oh, very much so connected.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, my original idea for my capstone has kind of shifted a little bit with my capstone placement,
Hmm.
but very much along the same lines. I I mean, really related to this, occupational injustice topic, I wanted to be able to go into schools, advocate for why we need these sensory supports, um, and help create a space, create a sensory room, create you know I mean even just like protocol, like sensory protocols, like
Yeah.
how do we use any supports that we might get,
Hmm.
things like that, just kind of educating teachers and other support staff. So my capstone site it's a little bit wonky, but it definitely works. So I'm basically going to be pairing up with a local pediatric outpatient clinic,
Okay.
and the OT lead at that clinic is going to be working with me on. There's a small Catholic school in our area, and they have been reaching out to pediatric clinics trying to get OT to come in to their school because they want sensory supports. They want
Oh,
education.
fun. Yeah.
Um, and they want someone to come in and like help with funding and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. So that was kind of like a perfect thing.
That's awesome.
Um, in that clinic that I'm going to be working with, um, they are very sensory based. Like
Okay.
I mean, they have all disciplines. They have speech and PT as well, but they're also all using sensory strategies. So it's very sensory integrative, which is
Yeah.
great. And so I think all of the staff there will be, you know, um, wonderful connections and just support for me as I try to implement things in this other school. So I think I
Awesome.
think it'll be a really good thing. And I love that
Yeah.
they're already, the school is reaching out initially.
Yeah.
It's so that kind of takes out a lot of the barrier of
Yep.
um, trying to almost convince a
Right.
school or like school administration, like, this is why we need this.
Yes.
They're like, no, we know that we need it, but we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of perfect.
I
I'm really
love that.
excited.
I love to hear when parochial schools are reaching out for assistance to help keep kids with disabilities in those private schools. Um, I think allowing kids with disabilities access to faith-based education is so awesome. And, a private school does not have to provide anything extra for a student with a disability. So when we see those schools going above and beyond that way, that is so, so cool. And that is really awesome to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have two questions that I ask everybody at the end of each podcast episode. So, first, and this could be related to what we're talking about, but if you have a different thing that you want to answer this with, is also totally fine. So, first question is what area of life or practice do you think OTs should have a bigger role in?
Ooh.
And
Um,
there's so many things, but
I know. Honestly, um, I think I think even more of a role in mental health settings.
yeah,
So um and I know that there definitely is a place. There is a place for OT and that, it currently is um integrated in those types of places, but I feel like there's just a need for more more
yeah,
support from OT in that kind of a setting. So,
yeah, love that.
for sure.
And then last question, what current occupation brings you joy?
Oh, um, reading. That's my favorite thing.
I love it. Are you
Of
reading
course,
anything good right
Chris.
now?
Oh gosh. I always have like 5 books going at the same time. Oh, I mean, I've got a new one right here that I'm getting ready to try to read.
All
Somewhere in the
right.
City. Sounds like
Excellent.
a good one for the summertime.
That's right.
But yeah, I love thrillers. I love a good romance book. Kind of all over the place, but
Yeah, same.
yeah.
That's probably my favorite. I usually have an audiobook and a paper book and maybe some other ones laying around too. But
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I am very excited to see where your capstone takes you and hope that all that advocacy work just keeps on trucking along. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.